Hello, are you interested in doing your master's or your doctoral degree in the US? And you're probably wondering how you're going to fund your education at the graduate level. My name is Chinenye Uwadileke. I am an Education USA advisor with the United States Consulate General in Lagos, Nigeria. Today, I will be speaking to you about how exactly you can fund or finance your graduate studies in the US. I was a graduate student like you once upon a time, and I've worked with many students who are either doing their master's or their PhD right now in the US, fully funded. I was also fully funded. I didn't graduate with any debt whatsoever, and I want to show you how you can finance your graduate studies in the US. So come along with me as I explain exactly what you need to do to be able to study in the US and graduate debt-free. The first thing I want to do is to explain to you how graduate funding works at US institutions. Unlike at the undergraduate level where you have most schools calling their funding scholarships, for graduate schools, most of the funding are not referred to as scholarships. They could be referred to as assistantships. You could have some sort of tuition waiver or partial tuition waiver, in-state tuition, a fellowship, and a grant, or it could be just called something else, okay? So don't go looking for that term scholarship because you may not find it. Secondly, at the graduate level, most funding that you receive is merit-based, not need-based. What that simply means is that you must have done something in the past to deserve whatever funding the university has to offer, or that organization or foundation has to offer. So if you have been working, you have done some research, you have some teaching experience, ensure that all those are on your resume or your CV when you're applying, because they're definitely going to be looking at what you bring to the table before determining if you can get some funding. At the graduate level also, it's important to note that many students are working for their money. So they might receive an assistantship that requires them to work on campus, but the good thing is that a lot of that work is closely related to their major or is exactly in line with their major. That's what they're studying. So the experience, the work experience and the funding that they're receiving doesn't take anything away from them getting their degree, okay? So it's a very good thing for you to know that at the graduate level, you're pretty much working for your money, except you receive a fellowship or some sort of external funding that doesn't require you to do anything to give back. Now, I would like to explain the different types of funding that exist. At the graduate level, you could have a graduate assistantship, a research assistantship, a teaching assistantship, a fellowship, a scholarship, or others. Others could be things like tuition waivers. It could be full or partial tuition waivers. An institution could give you in-state tuition. That means you're paying as a resident or a US citizen. An institution could also allow you to do a work study, okay, which is basically when you're working and studying at the same time, although research and teaching assistantships could be termed as work study. But basically, there are different types of ways that graduate schools like to finance or fund their graduate students, and you shouldn't be put in any one box. Look for as many opportunities as you can that exist at the institution that you're interested in. Now, I'll explain each of them in detail. The first is a research assistantship. As a research assistant, you're basically assisting a professor on a research project. He might require you to conduct some experiments, to do some programming, to do some simulation, to work on a research paper. Whatever it is, you're basically assisting a professor. He's the one who hires you based on your skills and maybe any experience that you might be able to bring to the table. So it's very important for you as the individual who wants to go to grad school to ensure that you are excited or you are interested in the research that you're being hired for. Otherwise, it would be a miserable few years for you if you have to do something that you have absolutely no interest in. So if you can, look for a research assistantship position that is in line with what you want to do at the graduate level. The good thing about a research assistantship is that you would most times receive a full tuition waiver and in addition receive monthly stipends that would cover your cost of living, so your feeding, your accommodation, and some university fees that may be charged. So the research assistantship is something that is very common, especially in STEM related fields where they're doing a lot of research and the professor has received a grant and is looking to hire assistants to help him execute that grant. So if you have any such research experience, that's something for you to take a look at. The next kind of funding that you might want to look at are teaching assistantships. A teaching assistant is basically assisting a professor to teach undergraduate level courses. You may either be assisting the professor or be put in charge of a particular class yourself. And you could be asked to grade papers, to lead discussion groups within that particular course or program, or just basically assist a professor to proctor an exam or a test of some sort. So as a teaching assistant, you want to do one particular thing, especially if you're an international student. Ensure that you have the English proficiency level that's required by that university. Because no one wants to hire a teaching assistant who is struggling with the English language, either reading, writing, understanding, or communicating in English, okay? So it's very important that you take whatever standardized English proficiency test that there are and make sure that you are a good fit when you're applying. Many a times you're teaching undergraduate level courses, so it's nothing, very advanced. It's usually something that you already are comfortable about or comfortable teaching. The subject matter will be something that you already have done well in for you to be hired as a teaching assistant. But again, dust your resume, put any teaching experience you have on it, ensure that you're showing that you have the ability to be able to communicate with students. And the good thing about a teaching assistantship, like a research assistantship, is that you will receive a full tuition waiver in addition to a stipend, a monthly stipend. And so it's also a very coveted opportunity to have to fund your graduate studies. Another assistantship is the graduate assistantship. As a graduate assistant, you are basically assisting in one capacity or the other to do some administrative type work. It could be at the university level, it could be at the department or the faculty or college level, it could be for an event, you could be working as a front desk person. But all in all, graduate assistants are usually expected to have a wide range of skills. So if you have any skills whatsoever, you've done some work in an administrative capacity, ensure that that is on your resume. If you are able to use a computer, different computer programs or apps, that should be on your resume. Whatever skills you think you have acquired in the course of your life, you want to put that on your resume or your CV so that whoever is looking to hire a graduate assistant knows that you can do the job. The fourth type of funding is the fellowship. Fellowships are usually internal or external. An internal fellowship is awarded by the university that you might be attending, while an external fellowship is one that you might have to apply for that may or may not be affiliated with the university, but it could be affiliated with your field of study. Usually a fellowship is not like an assistantship where a fellowship is basically money that you're given to be able to attend graduate school, and you don't have to pay it back, and you don't have to do anything to earn it. So you're not working to earn a fellowship. At the end of the day, you're called a fellow of whatever program you received a fellowship for. At the graduate level, I received a fellowship from the American Association of University Women. It was an international fellowship. It was based on the fact that I am a woman and I have done some work to help women and girls in my country. And so there were, other criteria, but I had to write a couple of essays, get some letters of recommendation, submit all of those, and then I was considered alongside with all the other women around the world who were applying. So for fellowships, you have to know what the criteria is, see if you meet that criteria, and apply for that fellowship on time. All right. There are other types of fellowships I have highlighted here. Or I just want to show you the Google PhD Fellowship program, the Schlumberger Foundation Faculty for the Future Fellowship. There are other types of fellowships that exist. Just make sure that you are looking for the criteria, or looking at the criteria of the different fellowships that you might be interested in. For internal fellowships, sometimes the university doesn't ask you for an additional application. Instead, they look at your profile when you apply and they match you to what is already existing at that institution. All right. Another type of funding is scholarships and grants. Now, I mentioned earlier that typically at the graduate level, most institutions don't call their funding for graduate student scholarships. But there are some institutions that might have scholarships and grants that are earmarked for graduate students. So it's very important for you to know what each institution that you're applying to calls the funding that they have for graduate students. But there might be scholarships like the Society for Women Engineers has a scholarship for women who desire to go into engineering or are studying something engineering related, and they might give you a scholarship to cover your cost of attendance at an institution, or some funding to cover your cost of attendance at an institution. There are other scholarships that exist in different institutions. For example, Stanford has a scholarship called the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program. It's exclusively, obviously, for students who are applying to Stanford University at the master's or the PhD level. And it's very important for you to read the criteria of each scholarship. There's a Joint Japan World Bank Graduate Scholarship Program. There are different scholarship programs. I just highlighted these few, and I definitely want you to go back and do research and find out what other scholarships, fellowships, or assistantships exist, okay? And one way for you to be able to do this research is to start now. You want to start at least 12 to 18 months in advance of whenever your school is starting. You will need that much time to put together a solid application, to put together all the requirements that they might need. I remember having to travel to get letters of recommendation, but all those things take time. You might need to write a standardized test. You might need to write a few essays or personal statements. So all those documents you need to put together. Start early so that you can beat whatever deadlines exist for any funding that exists. Where can you do this research? Online. There's so many websites, so many resources online, and I mean, the World Wide Web is full of information. But what I want to do today is to help you narrow that search to key sites that can help you know, okay, where to look first when you're done with this presentation. The first place I want you to look is the financial aid tab of the university that you're applying to. I'm going to blow it up a bit so that you can see it in detail. The financial aid tab of the university website will have information on funding that the university offers, as well as information on funding that the university can refer you to. I remember when I was applying to graduate school, I looked at the financial aid tab. I saw that the school I was applying to had a merit scholarship, had work study, but it also had links to the American Association of University website and other different websites funding programs. So I was able to apply to several other scholarships that were not offered by the university, and I got the AAUW International Women's Fellowship. So definitely look at the financial aid tab. Secondly, there are two websites that many of my graduate students, always mention. That's findthephd.com and researchgates.net. Many professors will put their research on, their requests for research assistants or teaching assistants or graduate assistants on these websites. And so it's very important for you to be narrowing your search when you get to the website to all the institutions that offer funding in the USA, okay? Findthephd.com, researchgates.net. And then finally, you definitely want to have a LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn jobs often might have some professors putting, calls for applications for different assistantships on LinkedIn. And if you're not on LinkedIn, I mean, how can they see your profile and see all the amazing things you have done and see that you're a great fit for their grant or for their assistantship position? So definitely create a LinkedIn profile, update it, ensure that you look professional online, and maybe someone would find you, or you'd be able to find someone who's looking for a student to hire. For you to be able to get funding, you might need to ask a few questions. So who do you contact when you're looking for funding? if you're thinking about a graduate assistantship, ask the graduate coordinators at every single institution, for every single faculty or college. There is like a graduate coordinator who, is the go-between between the university and the applicant. So ask them about any sort of funding that exists, especially if, there are graduate assistantships that the school has to offer. If you're looking for a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship, you want to reach out to the professors directly. They are the ones who are receiving these grants, and they determine how they want to spend it, who they want to spend it on, who they want to work with. So if you've reached out to them and you have made a good impression, chances are that they might want to hire you. That is exactly how many students I know have been hired to as a research or a teaching assistant. You also want to reach out to alumni and current students. Anyone who has gone to that institution or is currently attending that institution would be able to give you some insight into funding sources that exist. Some of the sources of funding are not published on the university's website yet, so an insider would be able to give you that kind of information. And then finally, you might want to ask your own professors or your supervisors who are working with you right now, especially if you have a good rapport with them. They might be able to tell you about that professor in the US who is working on a research area that's aligned with what you're interested in, because maybe they collaborated with them on a conference paper or they did a joint presentation together, or they've done some work together, so they can refer you, especially if you are an outstanding student. Okay, so those are some tips I'll give you. Finally, I just want to give you some very important tips. Start early. Okay, how early, you might ask? As early as you can. The early bird eats the worm, that's for sure. So when you start early, you present yourself as put together, organized, ready to go, and there are no surprises for you. Secondly, ensure that you are a good fit. Very important, when you read that application or you read those criteria, the eligibility criteria for whatever, ask yourself, do you have what it takes to get it? If you do, definitely apply. Don't feel intimidated by the list of things that are required of you. Ensure that you're applying and you're putting your best foot forward. Thirdly, follow directions. The biggest mistake a lot of graduate students make is when a school has given you clear directions on what they want to see on your application and you do the complete opposite, or you just do something different. For example, they ask you to write a 1,000-word essay and you decide to make it 2,500 words because you have so much to say. That does not show you in a positive light. That shows that you find it difficult to pay attention. Okay, so make sure that you're following whatever directions you are given. You also want to apply for several opportunities. Very important. There are so many opportunities out there. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure you spread your opportunities and spread your chances of receiving funding, okay? And then be persistent. If one door closes, I assure you that another will open. Make sure that you don't let a rejection letter just throw you off course. Ensure that you keep applying, keep calling to ask, send emails to follow up on anything that you've applied for. And then finally, make sure that you are consulting knowledgeable people. Ask questions. There's a proverb in my place that says that the person who asks questions will never get lost. So ask questions when in doubt. When you have questions about the process, what you should do, how you should do it, where you should look, definitely ask those who have gone ahead of you. Those are my top 6 tips. I will leave you with one final tip, and that's just to say that hard work pays off. Don't give up. Put in the hard work. Put in those hours studying for those standardized tests. Put in those hours writing and rewriting your statement of purpose on your essays. Put in those hours searching through the website for all those opportunities, and I can assure you that it will pay off. Even though a lot of people say that funding exists mostly for those in STEM fields, yes, I agree. But even if you're in the social sciences, the humanities, you're in a professional field like public health, law, medicine, there is still funding out there. All you really need to do is to buckle down and look for what exists, because it does exist and you can definitely get it. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to connect with you beyond today. You can reach out to me via any of our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I am at Education USA Lagos. You can reach out also to my colleagues around the world. Education USA Advisors. We're in 178 countries. There are about 400 centers. And what we do is to help students navigate the process of studying in the US. We'll be really happy to help you, and we wish you the very best as you apply for your graduate studies in the United States. Thank you.